Hello, and welcome to another installment of Susquehannock High School's Alumni Pride. I'm your host, Doug Walters, and with me today is Susquehannock High School alumnus Liz Jones. How are you today, Liz?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Doug?
I'm doing pretty good. As two fellow alumni here, it's great to be able to sit down and talk to you. And I think what we try to do in this show is we try to find out, from some of those who have gone before, what are you up to now? What's changed? What stayed the same?
Sure.
So I think you know some of the questions ahead of time, but we'll get into them here. Tell us, when did you graduate from Susquehannock?
I graduated in 1995.
Okay.
So we actually just celebrated our 20th reunion.
Perfect.
Over homecoming weekend, so that was nice.
Perfect. Oh, that's great. Okay. I hope you had a great turnout. It's always good to get
We
back
did.
with the people that you recognize from the past. And
Absolutely.
have you found that you've kept in touch with a lot of them over the years?
Not so many like on a kind of regular basis, but you sit back and think to yourselves that you pretty much had 12, 13 years together with these people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just nice to get together and reminisce and talk about the good old days.
That's fantastic. Well, so as you're thinking about the good old days here at Susquehannock, what are some of the things that you remember most?
Number one for me would definitely be sports. I played basketball, excuse me, 3-year varsity starter, which was a pretty big deal for me back in the day. I was on the first girls soccer team that they ever fielded here when it was an exhibition league. And I did track. And for me, those kind of after-school extracurriculars were super important.
Mm-hmm. Any highlights in particular that come to mind when you think about your time playing sports here?
Yes, absolutely. My junior year, I will never forget this game. Red Lion was a big rival of ours, and we traveled to their court. They were really good that year, and we ended up beating them 44-39. I'll never forget that score in my life. My coach at the time, Coach Mark McCusker, he was a very kind of quiet leader, and we went in at halftime down by a couple points, and he just got us so fired up. We just went out and beat him, and it was the greatest feeling.
That's awesome. You never forget those things. I know exactly what you mean. And it looks like in addition to the basketball and the soccer, it looks like that you also threw javelin and you participated in track and field. So it sounds like you were kind of an all-around athlete here at Susquehannock in your time here.
I tried to be.
Yeah, you tried to be. In addition to being on the field, what kind of curricular things were you involved with during the school?
Sure. I participated in student council at least 1 year. I was a senior aide for the then athletic director, Tom Hoover, and that was really great. When I was getting ready to graduate, I really thought that athletic director was the route that I wanted to take with my career, so getting to spend time with him and some of the behind-the-scene things that he would let me do, that was really good for me, eye-opening.
Mm-hmm. And I think we'll get into, as this interview goes along, how your time here at Susquehannock, both as an athlete and maybe getting some of that mentorship from Mr. Hoover, may have guided you into the path that you're on now. But let's talk. You had mentioned Mr. McCusker as a source of inspiration for you.
Yes.
Maybe tell us a little bit more about how he helped to shape who you are today.
He was just a great coach. He was never a coach that screamed at you to get his point across. You could tell that he cared about you. He was just kind of that quiet source of guidance and inspiration on the sideline. And years later, after I graduated, I was able to come back as a coach myself. I started coaching the 7th and 8th grade team, and maybe 2 years into that, he came back to coach the varsity squad. I went up to coach JV, so I got to coach with him, and that was a really great experience to kind of get to know him as an adult and in a different role.
Mm-hmm. In addition to Mr. McCusker, are there any other individuals who you look at as inspirational or as mentors during your time here?
Absolutely. My social studies teacher, I believe I had her when I was a sophomore, Mrs. Adams. She was a very strict teacher. She didn't take anything from anybody. She would yell at you. I think she made me cry once. But the great thing about her is that she was so tough on me, and I didn't really understand why, because I was good in her class. I was a good student. But she told me, as a senior, she came up to me one day in the hall and put her arm around me. She said, "The reason I was so tough on you is because I can see you have all this potential." And she said, "I really like you. You're a good kid, and you're going to do good things." Mm-hmm. And that, for me, I remember that moment. That was profound for me.
Those are those things that stand out as you look
Right.
back at your time in school and you say, that was a foundational moment when a
Absolutely.
teacher or a coach or someone in that position takes you under their wing, so to speak, and
Absolutely,
builds
and it
you
was
up.
good experience. You know, once you graduate college and you get out into the real, the workforce, you have to learn how to deal with all types of people. Some people are going to be more easygoing, some are not, and so you have to learn how to navigate those personalities. So that was kind of my first
Sure.
taste of that.
So let's talk about that. Once you left Susquehannock High School, what did you go into in terms of college or work?
I took a year off after high school just to work and kind of just have some life experiences. And then I enrolled at Penn State York, went there for a year, then I transferred up to main campus, went there for a year, and then I transferred down to Towson University, which is where I finished out my undergrad degree. In the middle of all that, I got married and had my first child, so I had that on top of taking, full 15 credit course load and working part-time, so it was busy.
And you had mentioned that initially you thought maybe going the route of an athletic director was what you were cut out for, but did things change once you got out of school?
Absolutely. Well, when I went into Penn State York, I had the idea that I was going to be an athletic trainer. I had injured myself numerous times in high school and spent a lot of time in the training room with Miss Deb at the time. And I played basketball at Penn State York, but I ended up blowing out my knee the first game, ended my WNBA career there. So I went along that route, got to Penn State main campus, had to take some anatomy classes, and realized that was just not for me. At that point, switched to sports management, and athletic director was kind of where I thought I was going to go. But I also knew I wanted to coach. I wanted to get back into coaching, so I took some classes that kind of helped along with that too.
And then after college, how did things shape out for you?
Well, after college, I answered an ad. Actually, this was before I even graduated, before I got my undergraduate degree. I was looking through the newspaper one day, and I saw in the classified section that they were looking for a part-time sports clerk at the York Daily Record. I had no idea about newspapers, journalism, but it said sports, it said part-time, it looked fun, so I applied. I got the job, and that was 16 years ago, and I just kind of grew into it and really started to love what I was doing there.
Gotcha. And, once you got into the Daily Record, how did your career progress from there? Because obviously you're no longer a clerk.
Right. I was a clerk for about 6 years, doing part-time work. Within that, I went back and got my master's degree, still in sports management, because at that point I thought I was going to get into maybe local recreation management or something along those lines. I got a year into my graduate program, and they offered me a full-time job at the paper as a copy editor. At that point, full-time job, I felt I needed to take it, so I took the full-time job while still finishing my master's. And just worked my way up. Again, I really started to love what I was doing there, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I stayed at the game and just worked my way up. Got promoted to assistant sports editor, and then about 2 years ago to sports editor.
And I think you're being very humble, and your growth at the Daily Record, just from personal knowledge, hasn't just been just as what you've put it. I know that at the Daily Record they've branched out into other things like Game Time PA, which I think is now recognized as one of the leading sports media pieces in the area. And you are also in charge of Game Time PA.
Correct. Yep.
And that's
editor.
not just, am I right, York? That's
Correct.
not just the York region. How far
Correct.
does Game Time PA expand?
Game Time stretches all the way over to the Chambersburg area. It goes through York and Adams counties, and then it also encompasses Lancaster and Lebanon for the LL League. At one point, we also expanded over to Philly when we kind of partnered with some sister papers we had over there. We got bought, so our companies are no longer the same. But so yeah, from basically Fulton County over here to Lancaster and Lebanon.
Gotcha.
Over here.
And I think that's your Susquehannock background, your strong leadership skills that you picked up here that have allowed you to serve in that role and help to expand and change the way that journalism works here in York and the region. I see a fun fact here. Tell us a little bit about the Susquehannock and York Daily Record connection there.
We've actually had quite a few people who have graduated from here, where you being one of them. Doug worked with me as a clerk for a while. Our Penn State writer, Frank Bodani, he is I believe an 88 or 87 grad. Our entertainment editor, Ashley May, she runs flipsidepa.com. She's a Susquehannock grad. Just recently, I had 2 part-time clerks who were Susquehannock grads as well.
That's great. I don't know if that speaks to the Daily Record, just wanting Susquehannock grads, or if it speaks to Susquehannock putting out great journalism students, or what. But
I think that would be it.
We appreciate the connection here at the district for sure. You know, beyond all of that, what are your future plans? Where do you see Liz Jones in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road? I mean, I'll throw this out there. I believe you were put on a list of 40 under 40 in terms of folks in the area who were
25 under 35.
25 under 35. Okay, there you go.
I'm not 40 yet.
There's still time, but you're out there. I think you're
Right.
recognized as a leader in your field. So where do you see yourself going from here?
Honestly, I never thought that I would still be at the York Daily Record 16 years later in the role that I am. I'm still a relatively young sports editor, only 2 years in. So I still see myself doing what I'm doing now. The question is, how will journalism look 5 years from now? It's rapidly changing as it is, and we're doing our best to really keep up with, and not just keep up with, but to be a leader in all the new changing technology and the way that people are receiving news. So there's still so much more out in front of me that, hopefully I'll still be a sports editor in 5-10 years.
That's great. Well, I think I can speak for everyone here at Southern in saying we're warrior proud of you, Liz, for what you've accomplished so far, and we hope that you'll continue to come back in your role. Visit our athletic fields, see our students in action out on the sports fields, and tell their stories through the newspaper. Anything else that you would want to share before we wrap up our Alumni Pride segment today?
I would just, to any student that's watching, I would just say, always be willing to put the work in, no matter what field you go in to. Sometimes people get out of college and they might feel that they deserve to be in a certain position, but they don't have the experience, or they haven't really gotten the real world work experience behind them. So be willing to put in the work, be willing to be humble, be willing to start at the bottom if you have to, and work your way up. Not everybody takes the path that I did. But it paid off for me.
Perfect. That's a valuable sentiment for our students to hear in our community. So again, for myself, Doug Walters, and also for our video production students here at Susquehannock High School, we thank Mr. Tim Hare and Mr. Mark Rill for their leadership in this production. And we look forward to seeing you next time on another installment of Alumni Pride.